Help if I actually set up and grabbed my mic. Yo, what's up, everybody? Yeah, today we are going to work on hopefully wrapping up the OpenAI implementation, at least like the first round of the implementation for OpenAI structured outputs. I've got plans to support many other providers with structured outputs, but since OpenAI supports, I think has some of the best support right now for structured output, figured we'd start there and get that running. So, yeah, we'll dive right in and do OpenAI structured output, and then maybe write some docs for it. I'd love for at the end of the stream to have that ready to merge, or pretty close to ready to merge, so that we can get get people onboarded and start using that. And then I'll circle around and start working on support for probably Anthropic next, who supports JSON mode. So no guarantee on the structured output, but you will have a guarantee of getting JSON back. And then we'll hop on to some of the other providers like Olama and Grok. But yeah, we'll dive right in. Yesterday on stream, we got a pretty good way in. We fixed some tests. We fixed all of the outstanding issues with PHP Stan. We wrote a few tests. So right now, what I think we'll do is just start with a review, going through the functionality for OpenAI, and kind of see what we have left to do, and then figure out how we're going to structure the docs, because pretty much everything for text generation is the same for structured outputs. It's just now we have an additional method to add our schema, and then we get a different expected output. So yeah, let's dive in. All right, let's take a look at our test file that we did some work on yesterday. I'm gonna mute up and adjust my mic real quick. All right, cool. Sweet. Mind Zone, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Sick. So let's take a look at like what we have going on here. We have just kind of like a high level test for, we can just like prove that everything's passing right now. That's neat. We are at like 500 even assertions. That's pretty cool. So we have just kind of like a high level test for that, just to see that we actually return some structured output. So we've got this like fixture response, fixed response sequence. This is sort of like PHP VCR, but it's my own implementation. It's not quite as slick, and it's just like a wrapper around Laravel's HTTP helper. It allows us, there's a different method for recording them, and we kind of have this like iterator pattern where I'm able to actually like save multi-turn iterations and be able to return those back as a sequence of responses. So if we look at in our fixtures directory, we'll see that we have like for OpenAI, the 1s and 2s and 3s are all just like the extra iteration files. So we've got one for structured output with multiple tools in structured mode. So the structured mode versus JSON mode is based on which model we choose. So with GPT-4o, that supports structured mode. And then the next test is doing JSON mode using GPT-4 Turbo. And we've got a test specifically for strict schema, defaults to a null value, and then we have strict schema with the additional meta. So we have this new method that we just added in here yesterday, very similar to what we have with tools, being able to provide meta for like strict schema on tool arguments. We're now able to enforce that with the schema on outputs. Again, that's specific to structured outputs. So I wonder if we should change this to I think this is fine for now. let's go take a look at the implementation. So we take in our request, we look at the mode, we get like the structured response mode for the given model. If it's JSON, we got to append this message, which this is something which is going to be common across all the models that support like a JSON output mode. Is like actually like an OpenAI will do like a regex check to see that there's a message that does request like the word JSON in it. So we say like, hey, respond with JSON that matches the following schema, and then we pass like our defined schema in. So we like append that message to the message chain. We send our request, we do some error handling. Like this is all error handling. Have our provider response. And we just respond with the text here, and then if we look at the structured generator in the generate method, we actually have this like decode for each step. We try to decode the object, and then also for the final response out of our response builder also has a very similar method. So like our response builder, this is kind of like a funky setup, and I will say the having the fluent builder I think is really nice. It feels very like Laravel-esque, very similar to Eloquent. Kind of a pain in the butt to like manage because it gets just like a little weird state-wise. So for our generator, we actually need to keep track of state, because when you send max steps, we actually iterate and like take the response of things like tools. So we take your tool response and we feed that back to the LLM automatically so that it can use the result from the tools to like further its text generation. And I want to capture like each step. So if we take a look at we look at the docs and we look at text generation, go all the way down to generation parameters, response handling, right? So we have like on a response, we have response text, we can get the finish reason, like total usage for the entire, like all of the steps. And then like each step, you have like different data that you can like pull off of each step, like the usage for each step, the step text, and then we have like all of our response messages. So like actually we can just take a look at that in the code, right? So our like structured response, we have our steps, and if we take a look at each step, right? Each step can have like text, maybe an object, a finish reason, tool calls, tool results, like step usage, response, and like messages. Response, this is an array, but like we do need to change it to a value object at some point. Right, and so our like final response is just about the same. However, it's a little different. We have like our steps as a collection, we have response messages, our object, which may come back with structured output. And then if we look at the ignore that change, if we look at the response builder, it just kind of gives us a way to like build up that final response over the course of like actually iterating and doing different things. So for example, here we like add a whole step in, or somewhere else that we access it. So like right here, when we like send the provider like request, we immediately take like the response message, like we create a response message from the assistant, since that's like what's coming back. So we kind of take that like assistant response and we feed it back to, we use that as like feeding it back to the, like we add it to the array of messages. So we add this response messages. We kind of keep track of state of the messages through just like an instance variable of messages, which comes from our builds text request trait. And then we use that when we, so like we have this like structured request builder, and that makes sure that we have the schema, and then like builds up this structured request object. And this, you can see where we grab, where we actually like grab the messages off that instance variable. And so like when we add them in as that assistant message, now it has that context going into like the next iteration. Same with like tool results and all of that. Because like tool results are actually a, like tool calls are part of the assistant message, and then we have like tool results, which is its own message type too. And we handle that through this like handle tool calls trait, which maps all of the tool calls. Like actually, like here we call the tools, and this like handle tool calls method like maps over all of them and gives us like the tool result from like calling the tools and everything. So it's like the class manages a lot. There's like other ways that I think I could approach this, but I think at the cost of fluent building, or end up pushing like a lot of responsibility onto like each provider implementation. And that's a shift and a refactor that I may make before we go 1.0. It's actually kind of what's holding me back before going to 1.0, is trying to figure out like how to shuffle this stuff around maybe a little bit. And I may just push a lot of responsibility to the providers and a little less responsibility on this like big generator class. You know, so I won't get too far into that because I definitely will like go down that rabbit hole for sure. So we have our structured handler. We have the provider response. The other thing we introduced with structured is like the structured generator. And yesterday we did we wrote some tests for structured generator. And now what we did is we started by just copying over all of the tests from the text generator, since they basically handle all of the same use cases. I figured that it would probably make sense just to duplicate the test suite and make sure that we're covering at least all of the same stuff that we're covering for text generation, but just in an object form. So we can step through those, because this is just like also kind of code review for myself. So we do some like basic setup here. Where I have this like complex schema that I don't think we actually use anywhere. It's just something that I have a like defined schema to pass into these tests. We have our test provider and we register that. The reason why we're kind of doing this weird with this double assignment, we want it available on the class for us to be able to interact with, but because we're using a short function in the way that the Prism manager class works, we can't pass in like this provider into this value here, because it will think that we're trying to reference this as the Prism manager class. And so that just gets like super wonky. So we do this double assignment so we can just pass in like a regular variable. And again, this like useless schema, it's not useless, it's just kind of like a placeholder for us to pass in. Like for example here, where we just need a schema. It doesn't matter what it is, just give me a schema. Don't know what happened to my music. Let me fix that. We're just shuffling my liked playlist, so who knows what we're gonna get.
I saw a girl last night. She was standing in the light in a corner of the room.
Restream UI is totally borked right now. Probably only going to be paying attention to Twitch chat because of that for the moment. All right, so let's see what we got here. We got throws exception if we don't set a schema. I think that's solid test. Correctly resolves a provider. Is this on the generator though? Is that part of build's text request? Oh, we do. It is part of. It's right here is where we resolve it. All right, so we want to check that it correctly resolves a provider. We're not even like testing what the provider is here. I don't know, this test really isn't doing. I guess it is testing that we resolve the test provider. It doesn't even do anything useful. I don't know about this test. I'm just gonna pull it. That's like innately that's going to get tested regardless when we start like inside the OpenAI tests and everything too. So this next test, we have a like test provider that I've built up to be able to like test the generator basically. We can like stack up responses, we can access the underlying request, and that's what we're doing here, is getting the underlying provider request and being able to like assert that we've added client options. So that's a good one. I like that. We got a test for client retry, which is good. Defaults to no client retry, which is what we want to expect. It allows us to pull by enum or string. I think that's a good test. Correctly builds requests. So we're using like, this is like a kitchen sink test, I think. So, question in chat, is it not useful because the testing is not ideal for external services? The test that I eliminated was like testing that it could resolve a given provider, but it was not really asserting anything. Like, let's take a look at it. So it says it can correctly resolve like a provider, but all we're asserting is like the output of that, and there's not really a way for me to like get the underlying provider instance because I don't get that until we generate. So actually, we don't even do that until we send the provider request. So we resolve it here when we're actually sending. So I guess I could I could kind of flip this test and like maybe make like the expectations more useful. Like we could look at let's see, request. I think we want to look at so there's no responses. Actually, if we look at our OpenAI text test, we can grab this, I think. Add this system prompt in, and then I think we can grab this and say, I'm so overzealous with my escape key, so I will constantly be accidentally moving text around, just like that. All right, this maybe makes a little bit more sense, right? So now what we're doing is we're leaving this test in here, but we're saying it correctly resolves a provider, and we're saying like we have our test provider, and so our test provider is like what's going to give us that this system prompt got set. And I guess we could even like not I guess we don't even have to go that far. I guess we would say we want structured request. All right, cool. So this test I think is useful again. Maybe it doesn't hurt. I don't think to have it. All right, so we've got this. It correctly builds requests. This is like a pretty kitchen sink request with basically like all of the options with prompt, with system prompt, and just like making sure that it's like correctly building up this request object, because that's what like the Fluent builder is on the generator, because that's what we return. So we gotta kind of check the kitchen sink, make sure that like we can set all the different options. And I figured a kitchen sink test is a little easier to pull off than, you know, trying to like test each individual thing in each test. I think this kind of asserts everything that we're looking for. Now we're looking for with messages, because we're using prompts here. Correctly builds with messages. And so like a prompt, the reason here why we are like checking messages still is because with prompt, what that is essentially just like adding a single user message to the like messages array, just without having to use like the messages interface like we do here. Generates a request with tools. All right, so here's where we get into like the meat of it. So we define, we have like a generates a response with a provider. So we have our schema object here, which is like a weather forecast. For description, I don't know. I guess like that's fine. This line's a little too long. So we have our string schema with the forecast summary. Then we actually just like build up a matching response for this, and all we're doing here is like, this is like a provider response, so like this is what would be coming back from OpenAI, and we're just making sure that it builds up like the final response object correctly. So we're looking at like the response object, making sure that like that's being decoded correctly, since we're like JSON encoding it for the text field, which is how it comes back from us, like from OpenAI. So we're just like asserting that the final response object gets built correctly. We're looking at the response messages, making sure that those are all set up correctly. And then we're checking that like the steps, like we kind of talked a little bit about earlier, looking at that response builder and how it like builds up each step. So we get this like really rich response object. We're just going through and making sure that all of that is configured correctly as well. We generate a response from a driver and tool with max steps, right? So this is like basically doing the same thing. We're adding a like OpenAI response, more or less. It could be anybody, because like the provider response is just like, it's one of Prism's abstractions. So I don't have to like dig in and sweat like exactly what an OpenAI response would look like, right? So I digress. And this is what I said earlier. This is still an associative array. It really should be a value object. I just keep forgetting to get around to doing that. So maybe I'll spin up an issue. It'd be a really easy, like low-hanging fruit for someone to come in and grab a contribution with. All right, cool. So we create a weather tool. We just return like a hard-coded value. We make the request. And we're just kind of like asserting less than we are up here, because we've already asserted a lot of that stuff there. So now down here, we're just kind of like asserting the stuff that's specific to tools, right? Finish reasons tool call. So this is without max steps, so that we're going to finish with a tool call. And this is one that stops when using max steps. So our finish reason is tool call, and now we have two responses here in like a response chain, right? We have a provider response that finishes on tool calls, and we have a provider response that finishes on stop. And so utilizing max steps, it's gonna like actually iterate and like get like once we have like tool calls, it'll then like send back with tool results. Kind of just like get our response messages, make sure that we have like the correct chain there, and it throws if an exception if you send a prompt and messages because it's like an and or thing. So I think that's all fine. I can't think of anything to add to the test. I feel like this test suite is like not great. It covers a lot of stuff. I just don't know if like all of the tests are really like valuable, but that's something to worry about before we do like a 1.0 maybe. So we also created tests for OpenAI specifically. All right, and we went through these I think already. We returned structured output using the fake responses, JSON mode. I think that's fine for these. I don't know. I think we're in like actually pretty good shape. And like the way that I decided to handle breaking this up is like I just kind of use this like handler pattern, I guess. We'll just clean this up. Where we have this like text handler and like a structured handler, and we pass in the client to either of these, and then the handler is then like responsible for figuring out like how to actually make the requests, and the handlers ultimately need to like return this provider response. I was curious about something. I woke up with this thought this morning. We have provider response, and we have no, they're different enough. I was thinking that they were like super duplicated, but they're not. All right, I think this is good. Actually, I don't know. I think it's gonna be really boring on stream if we just like write some docs, but I think that's what we're gonna do. So let's go take a look at our docs directory, right? We've got core concepts. I think we're looking in here. We have text generation. All right. Let's have some fun with this. Let me all right, we're gonna use Claude projects because this is what I do for Prism docs. At least the first draft of everything, right? So we've got let's update all this stuff. We'll select all, let's delete this. So you can see a little bit of like my workflow. You can see I use this like quite a bit. All right, so what we're gonna do, we got a Claude project for Prism. We're gonna go into the docs. We're going to we're gonna need this documentation style guide. I'm gonna add it. and then we're gonna reuse it. So we're gonna add all of the markdown files. We don't need these. So we're gonna add all the markdown files from our docs, because like that's gonna be useful for like context. Cheezo Pete's. So we're using like a system prompt here. We're using Nova from Collaborative Dynamics. Love Nova. She's like my little sister. I'm just so fond of that system prompt. The stuff like Sam over at Collaborative Dynamics is doing is just, it's like next level prompting. Highly recommend you go consume their content, hop in their Discord, buy the Nova prompt. Like it is a game changer for sure. All right. We're back in Prism, and what we want to do is we want to add our actual, like, all of our code files. So let's just like bump in here. I think I have, we don't need all the providers. We do want OpenAI. Cool. I don't actually. Peak and Flow asked in chat. He has Sunspot's Discord version of Nova. Do you know if there's a new one updated on the site or version? I don't. I'm using the same version that I purchased a while back. I actually don't know if there's any updates to it or not. That might be something worth checking out. Dude, so I have and I can. I just kind of prefer Claude projects, to be honest. But let's do it. Let's use Prism to write this docs page instead of Claude projects. Let me clean this up. Oops. Oh no, what did I do? I just lost my window. No. Here, give me a second. Here we go. I use a virtual, the reason why this got weird is I use a virtual display manager because I've got like a really big monitor. So I use a virtual display as for streaming, and I just like lost my window and everything. All right, so let's go over here. We're gonna use OpenWebUI, which I have wired up to Prism. We can take a look at that real quick. Let's see what that looks like. We'll have to do all the same stuff we just did. Let's take a look at. All right, so that's Nova. So OpenWebUI, I have, if we look at the Docker Compose file, server side up, best PHP Docker images around. We use server side up to serve our Laravel application. We have a bunch of just different services wired up. We expose that over 8091, and then I have that exposed through, that's just like exposed for us if we like need to get to it directly. But more importantly, I have OpenWebUI pulled up here, and I have it like default over to using Prism Server as part of the Prism package. That's how all of this works, through Prism Server. And then I have that exposed on port 3000. And then I use Cloudflare Zero Trust to like reverse proxy and share that out. So what we can do here is we'll do the exact same thing. We're using Nova here as well. let's go ahead and grab all the same files we had before. I think I should just be able to grab all this. And then let's grab the docs. We'll skip the style guide for now. We don't need these. So add those in. And then what I do want to do is we're going to grab the style guide and we're going to put that like right in the prompt. Using the following style guide, create the oops. Oh, we're not handling refusals at all. I don't know. I kind of froze. I don't know what to do about that at the moment. We'll just work on the docs, I guess. We can circle back to that. All right, so we need to, some providers, we need to note that structured output models vary by provider. Some providers support structured outputs with a guaranteed adherence to the schema, while others just support JSON mode, guaranteeing JSON output. But all right, let's see what we get. I gotta get like I think my game plan is to get like structured outputs, which is like I think by far like the most requested feature. I want to get that squared away. Then I want to probably knock out embeddings and then circle back to streaming text output. That's something that I think is like really missing, and I think there might be even a PR for that that somebody else contributed that I need to take a look at. I'll just have to go take a look and see. I've been kind of like heads down with this. All right, let's see what we came up with. This is actually correct, I think. All right, so now here's something interesting. Let's grab this. Oh, I will note that this is also this under the hood Nova is using Sonnet, like the latest Sonnet from like Sonnet 3.5 latest from Anthropic, which is the same that we're going to use here. We have all of our stuff added. I think they increased the knowledge capacity because I feel like I was getting something. I think it was like way higher usage last time I did this. I love Nova. And we're seeing that like the response is like pretty similar because it is using the same underlying model. I see. I don't want to be responsible for maintaining this matrix. I think I mean, like, I don't want to maintain this, but maybe with some community support, I can like maintain it a little. It'll be a little easier to maintain. It probably makes sense to like have that. I know, like, this is all heavily inspired by Vercel, and I know they've got like charts that they keep up to date too. So maybe I can do some other things. All right, so this isn't bad. I like the one that we got out of Anthropic a little better, but I want to try something different. I want to try to use Gen to do this. Oh, you know what? Let's do something super fun. Let's add... No. I want to use Gen. Let's do another one from Nova. And let's add in Omni from Maestro. Cool features from Open Web UI. I don't know, I like kind of showing this stuff off because this is such a phenomenal product. And you can use this with like OpenAI today, and anything that is like OpenAI endpoint compatible. Which is the whole like premise for Sparkle servers, really, for me to be able to dog food Open Web UI and my Laravel app and all my Prism agents and everything. So that's a little background on like why Prism server exists. Maestro takes a little longer to respond. Just is what it is. So Gen There's another prompt from Stunspot, who's responsible for Nova and everything. Well, that's a bummer. We don't have anything from Maestral. I think it probably timed out. Let's do, this is Nova Maestral, and we'll just make that crazy. What's Jen set at for max tokens? Good, she's maxed to max tokens. All right, let's see if we can get something from Maestral as well. All right, let's take a look at what we got from Jen. So Jen is, so Nova is like a general purpose character prompt. Oops. Bummer. I know it's not Omni Maestral anymore, but I don't want to regenerate everything. Let's just revert this. Omni's just another character prompt. It's like an early... It was like an, I don't know, it was like a different prompt that I found from Stunspot that I kind of play around with too. It's a little... It's about as effective as Nova. It's just a little bit drier. Like Nova has a lot of personality. Omni has a little less personality and a little bit more like straightforward. So anyhow, like Nova's general purpose, like character prompt, drop it in anything instantly, like honestly, like instantly improves anything you're doing. And then Jen is another prompt from Stunspot that I found ages ago, but is a like writing specialist. So it's like a creative writing specialist. So we'll see how that like translates to the docs. All right, great. We got our Omni Maestral responded. So like I said, Maestral is like a little bit slower than everybody else, but I really enjoy the Maestral models. They work great. I've been using them like more and more, and they just dropped some like really cool support for their chat, as well as like some of their models like got some updates recently. Loving what they're doing over there. Sorry if you guys are chatting with me on any other platform than Twitch, like I'm not gonna be able to see it. There's some funky stuff going on with the Restream UI, so if you'd like to chat, come join us over on Twitch. All right, so let's take a look at what we got here. Structured output allows for... Man, they're all like... It's pulling this from... It's pulling that from my helper class. This is not true. I guess that's something we also want to call out. Actually, I don't want to call it out because I'm going to put that in with... OpenAI. I think I kind of like this middle one from Nova. This is actually like very thorough. cool. Let's drop this in. Let's see how it looks. This is mention. So we're gonna do. It's a little different. We're gonna grab this. I think, yeah, I don't, at least right now, I don't want to maintain some chart or table of like what models and providers support which mode. Just push that off. We should. All right, let's see what we get. So we broke things down. Like what we did is we're still including the style guide as like pasted content, but what we're also doing is kind of like reformatting our requests for like things that we want to make sure is in the documentation or not in the documentation. Instead of just being like a paragraph, we broke it out into a list. LLMs will see like line returns and stuff like as separation of information. So kind of breaking this down as a list, I think is going to give us a little bit better response, right? We want to note that output modes vary by providers. Some provider models have structured output, which guarantees adherence to the schema, while others just have JSON mode guaranteeing JSON output. We also don't need to duplicate everything from text generation, but we should say that it does accept all of the same options and everything. I can sort of see that over here a little bit in the preview. I don't want to maintain a chart of provider and model compatibility. Let's just like point users to check provider documentation. It's kind of an out, but I'm I'm just not there yet, and I don't think that there's like enough of a community around Prism yet to like foster lots of outside contributions for that. And then our last one is we should like mention that there are at times, you know, model and like provider specific documentation around like additional features like OpenAI's strict mode, and we should just point people over to those pages. So let's see what we got here. I'm going to leave this in here because this is pretty amusing. You want your AI responses as neat and tidy as Marie Kondo's approved closet. Structured outputs let you define exactly how you want your data formatted, make it easy, making it perfect for building APIs, processing forms, and any other data you need a specific shape. I think that's kind of cheeky. I like it. And that's like 100% Nova's like snarky personality. It's great. And like Peak and Flow mentioned, I'm really curious now if there's any updates to Nova. I'll have to go check after the stream.
I was walking down the street. This dude just came to me. He was trying to make me.
I really like that it broke down named fields.
And I got the blues, baby. And I got the blues, yeah, I got them. Oh. I got the blues, baby. And I got the blues, and I got them.
Is this valid PHP? Oops. Well, that's a neat feature. Definitely did not mean to do that.
Dude came back at me. Made me feel like a fool again. But I told him no. Not this time. And I got the blues, baby. And I got the blues, yeah, I got them. Oh. I got the blues, baby. And I got the blues, and I got them.
Okay, I think this is a good start. Here's something fun we can do.
Oh, what about house music? What about me? Oh, what about house music? Oh, it's in my blood, you see. No house music, you make me go crazy. Crazy. Crazy.
We're just gonna have basically we're just like having we're gonna iterate on this a little bit. We're gonna have like we're taking the documentation that it generated and we're resending in the style guide and we're just asking it to like, hey, what can we improve in here? Aha, no, I don't have the provided compatibility table. All right. That really was not helpful. Ooh, that's great. Yep, definitely need to do that. Let's just go double check. Is it structured or is it object? I think it's object. All right, let's see what we got going here. This is a good first pass. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's copy it, go over here. couple things we got to adjust. Oh, sick. It linked over to text generation perfectly. Sick. Alright. Some things we got to adjust. Alright, we need to do... I don't want to encourage strings. Right now, we're only shipping with support for OpenAI. I think it's fine for now. Let's take a look. Okay. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if that really adds any value. I think it looks cool. Sick. All right. Let's get. Oh, let's see. Peaking Flow's got a question. Had a question before. Didn't want to derail you. What you were working on, but you discussed adding embeddings to Prism. I'm curious. Are you planning to use embeddings to enhance the current conversation? So embeddings can be whatever you'd like them to be used for. So I'm not going to be At least I don't have any immediate plans to incorporate embeddings into like the text generation flow. So like I'm not going to be providing any like plugin systems for RAG, at least as of right now, or as part of Prism. I'm kind of eyeing up maybe starting a like sister project to this that is like more fully realized pieces of functionality, so that would like build on top of Prism. So I could introduce a like RAG workflow, and then like so I could introduce like a RAG workflow in this like other project, right? And then under the hood it would be using Prism's embeddings and Prism's like text completion in order to like do RAG, right? So if we're looking at like the OpenAI docs right now, like um oops. So we're looking at the OpenAI docs, like just like basically I'd be exposing the embeddings endpoint for OpenAI and the embeddings through any of the other providers, as like just a way to do embeddings. So this is like again, Prism's kind of target is like the lower level functionality of like just being able to provide embeddings, and then what you do with those embeddings is totally up to you. So I guess to answer your question, like I don't really have any like Prism won't be using the embeddings, but we'll be able to provide embeddings for you to be able to build your own RAG system with, if that makes sense. Man, they really don't talk about strict mode. All right, I was gonna try to like link to OpenAI's like strict mode documentation. I was like barely able to find like function calling with structured outputs, like something to link there. OpenAI's docs are like there's a lot of content there, but they're also like I feel like they're missing a fair amount of stuff. All right, let's shut down the docs. Let's see what we got going on here. It's going to open in this browser. How about we open it in the browser I'm streaming? Please and thank you. What is this doing? There we go. I just started recently. Just started recently using. Geez, oh Pete, I keep opening the sidebar. I just recently started using Zen browser as my daily. I was using Arc as my like browser of choice, and I love Arc. I still love Arc. I think I still prefer it, but they announced that they were like that uh, they feel that Arc is rather feature complete, and they're going to be now focusing on like a newer, more AI empowered browser, something. And so I just like wanted to use something that's a little bit more actively maintained. And Zen browser's been great. A little bit different shift because it's like Firefox based instead of Chromium based. I don't know, it's been pretty nice. There are definitely a few bugs, but I heard that their upcoming release is going to like fix a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, peak and flow. I hear that. You love Arc. You got ultra wide. I have a 49-inch ultra wide, so like I definitely feel that pain of like it's a little hard to see sometimes, like pushed off to the like all the way out to the edge. That's something cool that Zen's doing. Like they have like a sidebar that's very similar to Arc, but I think I just read earlier today in their next release they're gonna have like more traditional tabs available as well. So might be something to check out. Um, their workspace and like containerization sidebar. Like, see, this is supposed to be in a like in my like Geocodia workspace. This is supposed to be my personal workspace. This is supposed to be like over in the Prism workspace, but they're all kind of like mixed together. Um, and if I like swap around, like things like start to fall back in place. And like this is missing like Twitter in the pin tab, so like I don't know. There's like it's still a little wonky. And this is like also all right. So this one's like now I loaded out of the default workspace into like my personal cookie container because that's how they work with like cookie containers. Um, and like now I'm logged in, so we'll see. All right, so we're so I like to think about like titles. Came from like one of Caleb's Notes on Work podcasts about how he's been like titling his issues and PRs for like Flux and Livewire, and so I've been kind of trying to apply it that like the title is an extension of a sentence, and so for like adding new features, I figure it's like adding support for, and then the title. So like adding support for Open AI structured output. Create the pull request. What CI run? Actually, we can like check a few things here real quick. Types, formatting, I think it's good to go. All our tests pass, so we should be in good shape for CI. All right, let's just step through some PR review here. All right, sidebar, that's cool. Docs, we read through that pretty thoroughly. I think we're good here, at least for like a first pass. We updated OpenAI, builds text requests for provider meta. Oh, we moved this method. This method was on the text generator, and we moved that into the handles tool call trait, and we renamed this call tools because before it was handle tool call. We had handle tool calls and handle tool call, and it felt kind of weird. So I made it a little bit more specific, where we're like handling tool calls, which is like multiple. So you can see we're array mapping over here to get all the results. And then we have like call tools, which is actually responsible for like calling, like out of the array of tools, finding the specific tool that we need to call, and then calling that tool. And this like handles out like converting it to a tool result, and then like wrapping that up in a tool result message with all the tool results. So we're just updating. Oh, here, let's mark this red. Updating the contract. Output modes. Just kind of like some cleanups and refactors. All our other providers just throwing unstructured mode for now. This method feels kind of fat. I mean, the functionality is pretty tight. It just feels like kind of a fat function, like a fat method. Oh, just extracting some calls to map classes. Oh yeah, so like there was a I forgot who submitted it. Somebody very awesomely submitted a support for retries, and I just got a little bit more specific on the types for that. I don't know why, I just had to bug up my butt about it and did it. Oh, so here, syntactically, I think items is the better word instead of item, and I noticed that we had documented as items anyway, so structured generator. All right, let's pay attention here. We have a response builder. I guess I could have done constructor promotion here. I'll refactor it later. I'm like antsy. I really would like to be able to merge this today. I don't like that we have this twice. Right, it's on response builder, but it's also on the generator. But they're different, right? Like this just returns null. Or we try to decode it. Because this actually is for adding the response step, which might be text, might be an object, which is why we have both of these in here. Because especially if we're iterating over like tool calls, there's going to be text instead of like just an object at the end. So the object may be null. I don't know. I don't know if this is like the right way of handling this, but since they're all like read-only properties, I can't think of another way to handle it. So we'll roll with that. Structured response. Response builder. Well, that's not true. Oh, that's funky. How? Oh, jeez. All right, I guess we're not going to ship this today. All right, let's just keep going. Text generation, we pull that out into the trait. Text requests got provider meta treatment. Our fixtures. We reviewed this earlier when we started. We reviewed this when we started. We already talked about that change. Test provider. That's what I was thinking of. All right, so we got to do the Prism fake. Instead of this, other providers to follow. All right, so there's one piece that's left to do, and that's like update the Prism fake. So if we look at our docs, right, we have testing, we have our like Prism fake, like faking the response. We do not have that currently configured for structured, and I think I want to do that before I merge this. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to hold off on merging this until then. And I think we'll call the stream at that. We've been going for like almost 2 hours ish. Sick. All right. So thank you everybody for watching. We got a lot done today. It doesn't feel like we got a lot done because we mostly just did working on the docs and everything. Hey, Peak and Flow, really appreciate you for like hopping in the chat and chopping it up and having some stuff to talk about. So really appreciate you being here and participating along with it. So we used Prism and we used Claude to generate the documentation for structured outputs. We kind of did some code review, making sure that everything was sort of buttoned up. One other thing that I want to add before I forget at the end of here is we also need to do something for we got to look at OpenAI's refusals. So there's certain times where like OpenAI will refuse generating JSON or like a structured output, and so I need to like capture that and do something with it. Probably just like throw an exception if a refusal comes up. I don't know for sure, but something else to look out for. So I got 2 to-dos now to wrap this up. So thank you everybody for watching. We were doing recap. That's right. We generated the documentation. We like just reviewed everything for sanity and just kind of like stepped through all the tests, make sure all the tests made sense, that we had some coverage on the things that we needed to have coverage on. And then we used Prism and Claude to generate the docs for structured output, at least this initial iteration on everything. And we just kind of reviewed all that stuff, kind of tightened up, opened up the PR. And through the PR review, we surfaced at least 1, if not 2 things that still need to be done. So now I can hop in there and knock those things out probably tomorrow morning. And then hopefully sometime tomorrow we'll get OpenAI structured output merged. So very productive stream. It doesn't feel like we got a ton done, but we definitely got a fair amount done today. So thank you all for coming along for the ride. We'll be back streaming at some point during the week. I don't know for sure yet what time or days, but we'll definitely do it. So thanks again. We'll talk to y'all soon. Thank you.